Welcome to episode 157 of the Healthy Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dayan of Healthy Habit Medical Center, located right inside Healthy Habit Health Foods. And today we're talking all things Carlson Labs here with Laurel Sterling, who's a registered dietitian-nutritionist, certified nutritionist, and national educator for Carlson Labs. And she has worked in the natural products industry since 2000. Over the years, Laurel has counseled hundreds of individuals, lectured at various corporations and events, written numerous articles and blogs, and can be heard on radio shows and podcasts just like this one. She has a genuine passion for educating, informing, and empowering the public through nutrition education. Laurel, thank you for coming back on for our check-in here with Carlson.
My pleasure. Always great to be here.
I'm excited to dive into this one here over the next 26 minutes or so. Last time we talked, it looked like it was midsummer. We released this last episode 139 where we broke down sarcopenia. It's not just the frail and elderly that are affected by this, different causes of sarcopenia. We hit on bone broth, legumes, 3 key amino acids like glycine, taurine, and glutamine. So I recommend everybody go and check that episode out with Laurel. And so what's on the radar for today? And I got peppermint oil in my eye here right before I went live with Laurel. So that's pretty intense, folks. If you're going to use peppermint essential oil, keep it away from the face. That's a tearjerker, but it's powerful, and it's really good for the mind, energy, focus. Laurel, how are we doing?
Good. It'll keep you awake all day.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, so on the radar before we went live here, we were kind of breaking down what we wanted to cover, and we wanted to hit on some of the latest recent research pertaining to atrial fibrillation, bleeding risk, and how omega-3s tie into all this, because Carlson, that's one of the main things they're known for here is their history of omega-3 supplementation. So the stage is yours. Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so like you said, we obviously have a big marketplace with omega-3s, and over the years there's been 40,000 different studies done on omega-3s and its benefits, but every now and again, things surface and people bring to light different things, or they blow it out of proportion, or they blow it out of context.
Right.
So recently, back in May, there was some information that came out, and I don't know if you've heard about it in the stores or if anybody else really listened to it in the news, but we got some questions on it. So I wanted to address that and some of the more recent emerging research, like you said, that was on AFib as well as bleeding risk, and maybe if we have time, even touch upon TBIs and concussions, which that's been all over the news lately too, with younger kids, athletes, as well as the professionals. So with the AFib, like I said, back in May, there was headlines from, let's see, CNN, WebMD, the Healthline, other ones like Fox News, things that you would feel are very credible sources. But when you broke down what they said in the headlines for this research, they blew apart different parts of it that were incorrect because they really sensationalized certain things about death, which wasn't associated with this study, and some other various issues relating to cardiovascular disease, which actually that wasn't the outcome. So just to break it down for you, there's a UK biobank, which is a huge bank of health data that is accessible globally for researchers upon approval. So there have been over 16 or more that I know of different studies that were looked at with some research relating to omega-3s and cardiovascular disease. So this recent one was looked at by Chen et al., and he looked at the incidence of cases of AFib versus major cardiac events and death. And so with this one, they looked at over 400,000 different people, ages 40 to 69.
Mm-hmm.
And other researchers, like I said, had looked at this as well. And typically when you talk about this, you also mention in your study all the previous studies and their outcomes,
Right.
Whereas this person failed to mention one of the most recent ones by Lee et al. And so it broke it down when you looked at the different charts. It showed the omega-3s with their benefits, or which was favorable, or there was no significant difference, or whether it was unfavorable.
Sure.
And he found that the one AFib one was unfavorable and blew it out of proportion. So there were a lot of holes in what was reported when you looked at what they were self-reported fish oil supplement users versus looking at the actual blood levels
Oh,
of
interesting.
omega-3. So we talked about that last time as well, I believe,
Yes.
when you test your omega-3 index levels, and we have test kits for that. And that's where we're always saying test for vitamin D, omega-3s, don't guess. And
Those
so
Omega Quant kits.
yes, the Omega Quant kits that we teamed up with, yes. And they're at-home test kits that you can find your level of the amount of omega-3s in that bilipid layer. And so ideally they found that you want to be between 8 to 12%. And so that would be something that would be great to look at, those values versus the self-reporting, which could be very objective. So like I said, in this, they found 20 favorable and one unfavorable, and then there were 5 that had non statistical differences. So some that were really favorable in this were liver cancer decreased by 44%,
Wow.
myocardial infarctions decreased by 8%, COPD decreased by 12%. I mean, they were significant amounts. The one that they found as unfavorable was AFib, like I said. And when you're looking at relative risk versus absolute risk, you want to look at the absolute risk, which is absolute that it would happen. And it was a difference of 0.6%. So that's one thing that they just took and they put it out there in the headlines and then just ran with it. And they didn't say anything about anything else
Yeah.
of studies. So this is unfortunate because, again, such a magnificent different nutrient that we have that does so many wonderful things in the body. And because of this one piece, and they took it, like I said, in the headlines and pulled it apart, then people just were like, oh, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to take my omega-3s anymore. And again, there was so much that was not discussed versus what should have been discussed. So
Right.
unfortunately, this came out, and the next day I was out, where was I? I think I was in Utah doing some trainings, and someone asked me about it in the store, that I just heard about this on the news. And so unfortunately, we have this information to arm about telling people that this was just something that, again, was sensationalized, and we need to go back and really look at the rest of the research, which he failed to mention, and all the other 16 different studies that found favorable benefits.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I thought it was really important to let people know that. If
Yes.
I'm not sure if you guys get any questions there, but we've
All
had
the
some.
time. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's important to not just look at the latest study that was done, right? We have to look at meta-analyses are probably the best, the highest level of research where you're looking at a big study of multiple studies, right, to
right,
really see someone's risk. And then differentiate this from, let's say, the standard American diet. Most people aren't getting their fats from excess omega 3s, correct?
right. Mostly from the omega-6s from those soy oils and corn oils and refined peanut oils. So that's really significant to look at the balance between the omega-3s and the omega-6s. That's crucial for
Right.
sure.
And just a lot of nuts and seeds in general,
Right,
which are, yeah, they have a little bit of omega 3s, but they're extremely high in omega 6s. That's why in nature they're in shells, right? We might have hit on this in a past episode, but now they've taken them out of the shells, and then we just go by the handful, 10, 20, 30, 40
right.
seeds and nuts, which that puts your omega 6s through the roof, right? And so then you want to have the balance, correct? You want to hit on that a little bit, that ratio with the omega 3s and the
Right.
omega 6s, and why that's so important.
Yeah. So, like you said, I remember there were some people that were on vegan diets and they had high amounts of nuts and seeds. And initially they were feeling better, maybe within the first few months, but after that, they started actually going downhill and experiencing a lot of negative side effects. And that was because it was so heavy in those omega-6s, which we get through our diet plenty enough, but it's typically the omega-3s that we don't. We need that balance, because if you look at the inflammatory versus the anti-inflammatory cascades, you really want to have a higher amount of omega-3s to balance out, as you said. So typically, you mentioned the standard American diet, anywhere from 25-1 of a ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. We really want to ideally get it to at least somewhere like maybe even a 4 or a 2-1 ratio, ideally. So that's, like I said, depending on what you eat, that's going to be a big part of it, because even I heard of a researcher that was testing his omega-3 levels, and he said, I take a huge amount of omega-3s, but my omega-3 to 6 ratio was still off. So he said, I believe I have to really look at my diet at this point
Right.
now. So you could eat healthy nuts, like you said, and seeds, but way too much of that.
Exactly.
So that needs to be balanced, because looking at the body systemically, inflammatory, and a lot of diseases go back to that inflammatory aspect. So we really need to look at inflammation as the root cause of a lot of health concerns.
So, in a typical Carlson product, and obviously they're all unique in their own way, but what would be a good starting point for, would they be containing any omega-6s then in a Carlson product, or what can be a good starting point to start balancing out that omega-3 and 6?
I think one of the best ones, like I love all of ours in different ways, but one that's a great one to start out with that would get you to that higher, closer to the, or hopefully right to or beyond the omega-6, or I'm sorry, the omega index ratio of the 8 to 12% would be the maximum omega that we have, the max omega 2000. And that has 2,000 omega-3s in 2 soft gels. It's about 1,250 of EPA and 500 of DHA. So that one's a great balance, and that gets your levels up to where ideally we would be looking at for the omega-3 index. So just taking 2 of those a day with a fatty meal, whether it's your breakfast with the eggs, or your lunch with your salad dressing with oil, or dinner with your salmon, that would be a great way to get it in.
Perfect. I just did a screen share for all the audio listeners. You won't be able to see this, but you can head over later to our YouTube channel and just type in the Healthy Habit Podcast, episode 157 with Laurel. CarlsonLabs.com/maximum omega 2000 is the product that was just highlighted here as a starting point to start normalizing your omega 3 and 6 ratio. Run it by your physician if you're working with a functional medicine doctor or naturopathic doctor, or your medical doctor. A lot of them are now prescribing fish oils. You know that, Laurel?
Oh, yes. Well, a long time ago, I actually had some doctors with people walking in with prescriptions. So I do, like I said, I've heard recently too, with those with concussions, I'm hearing doctors recommending that too. So it's wonderful to hear.
Yep. So maximum omega 2000 provides 2000 milligrams, hence the name, of omega 3s per serving, including 1250, 1000 or 1.250 grams of EPA and 500 milligrams of DHA to promote heart, brain, vision, and joint health. And the AHA, which is the American Heart Association, they recommend eating at least 2 3.5 ounce servings of fatty fish per week, which isn't a lot, folks. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
it's like a palm size or less portion, right? You don't have to eat an entire salmon steak fillet.
right.
So to get these omega 3s, to get sufficient amounts to protect the heart and cardiovascular system, sardines is another source. Salmon, mackerel, doesn't have to be just salmon. There's different options. Most Americans aren't eating enough fish of this nature in the diet. So especially wild caught, a lot of it's farm raised. Do you want to quickly differentiate the DHA and EPA, please? That would help a lot of people. It's a good reminder and we get that question literally weekly. What's the
Uh,
difference from EPA, DHA? Some products have only DHA in it. So tell us about this.
right. Right. So EPA and DHA, we actually need both of those in the body. EPA predominantly has been seen with beneficial results with cardiovascular, and DHA is more so with, well, your retina is predominantly DHA and the brain is predominantly DHA, around your nerves and the throughout the neural supply. So it's more so when you think of brain and eye issues and mood, you think of DHA. For EPA, it's more so balancing inflammation, cardiovascular, things like that. Possibly pain, joint would be more EPA than DHA.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that again. So the maximum omega 2000, and you can see my screen share here, correct? You see the supplement facts?
Yes.
Perfect. And so what would be a good starting point on this? How many, is it soft gels? How many per day? You said per
Two.
breakfast?
Two. I mean, you can split it up throughout the day if you'd like to, but I definitely say just have at least two a day and with a meal with some healthy fats in there.
Thanks, Laurel. And I like the other ingredients aren't, I mean, you have some vitamin E in there with it, with the D-alpha tocopherol, some
Mhm.
natural flavors, and then the fish. No
Mhm.
other preservatives. It's not loaded with other ingredients as well. And the main focus then is going to be on the fish oil concentrate. Tell us why Norwegian.
I mean, we have a facility there, and
Okay.
so that's where they catch, process them. So when you look at the waters and the history of the fish and the replenishing of them coming back every year, so we look at sustainability and cleanliness. And again, the facility that we use is a really phenomenal one, and we test every bottle before it leaves there. And we also do third-party testings after that. So we think it's really important and it's a rich history. We also have Friend of the Sea on our labels. So Norway is very strict with its regulations of the fish because
Yeah.
again, it's been thousands of years. But we also have Friend of the Sea, which is another independent labeling, and they actually look at the different eco-friendly and so much more actually than that. So if you look into Friend of the Sea, they're involved in so many different projects, but we're proud to have that on our label as well.
Amazing. And plus the plastic neutral
Yeah,
initiative here, Impact Collective. And
yeah.
then we even have, like you said, Friend of the Sea. There's a lot of good certifications behind Carlson since you guys have been around for decades now, over 50 years, correct?
We're coming up on
Coming
60
up on
next
six
year.
zero.
Yes, yes, we're
How many
excited.
companies can say they've been in the products
Family
industry for
owned.
6 0 years? So that's
Right.
incredible there. And Consumer Lab, how important is it to have a good rating with the Consumer Lab? You're a 5-time winner here with the
Mhm.
top rated omega 3 EPA DHA products. Tell us about the Consumer Lab
So
survey, real quick.
this is based again on customer satisfaction.
Yeah,
So we're really um, excited just to be able to have that ability to say that we are rated the number one cod liver oil in North America. So it just adds to our accolades of people recognizing us and looking at when you break down Consumer Labs, they look at purity, potency, your lab of what you say on your labeling. So it's just really important for us to be transparent and talk about all the beneficial things that we have, as well as let people know that that we're not hiding anything and that you can see it right there on the label. We put a lot of money into the third party testings, which are very expensive tests. So it's quality of the raw ingredients as well as the processing and just being, label claim as what we put on there too, because a lot of times that's unfortunate that companies don't do that and they fail that because of they say that this is on there, but when they actually take it off the shelf and Consumer
it's
Labs looks
not.
at
Right.
it's not actually up to the label claim. So yeah, very
Yeah.
important for us.
Folks, you're listening to episode 157 of the Healthy Habit Podcast. We're talking with Laurel Sterling, registered dietitian-nutritionist and national educator for Carlson Lab. Again, a company that's going on 60 years, 60 years of being in the natural health space and helping consumers take their health to the next level. And so, what would you say is the 10,000-foot bird's eye view, and then why somebody would need an EPA DHA supplement potentially in addition to their diet if they're not getting enough? What would be like the three take homes then on the
Mm.
value of this type of a supplement like the maximum omega 2000.
Invaluable, honestly. When you're looking at some of the top health concerns out there with not just longevity, but you're looking at cognition, cardiovascular, and systemic health. It affects everything, all the cells in our body. So, I mean, there's all this information out there about blue zone diets and what is involved in that, and it considers a lot of omega-3s and fish in there. So it's really important to have overall, like I said, there's over 40,000 different studies, and if you Google it, it's everything from brain to eye health to cardiovascular to the nerves to immune system, joints. It just affects everything in the body. So I would have to say that, if I had to give a core four, I'd say you want to have a good diet overall, but you want to balance it off with an omega-3, a multivitamin, probiotic, and possibly a vitamin K and D supplement. After that, you would layer on whatever else you would need. But I think it should be everyone's number one because it affects everything in the entire body.
Mm,
So I think it's a crucial one to make sure that we have. And so many people, unfortunately, are not eating fish like we talked about, don't
yeah.
like it, don't want it for whatever various reasons. So this is a simple way to get it in either the liquid or in the soft gels. And taking it daily is really important because your levels will rise, but your body will use it, just like vitamin D. So you need to take this on a long-term basis, especially if you have any health history, cognitive, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's in the family, or cardiovascular issues from family or yourself. This is something you really, really need to make sure that you have in your daily routine.
Amazing. We have the full setup here. Carlson Labs right here at Healthy Habit Health Foods, 6029 North 7th Street. And you can call us at 602-252-6000. We ship nationwide. And all that information is in the description box below this video. Do you want to quickly highlight? I want to hear a bit more on the TBI, and then we'll finish. We'll close up here in concussion risk. You mentioned the bleeding risk, atrial fibrillation, and you might have, I think you did mention the TBI, but I do want to highlight this one more time. We just recently had a case of someone that was in a motor vehicle accident and they had a concussion after they had a CT scan done in the ER at Mayo Hospital. Tell us a bit more on concussion risk with omegas.
Well, so if you're not familiar with, you can look at more information with Dr. Michael Lewis. He's a retired colonel from the Army, and he does a lot of research with the military and also with different sports like soccer and football, collegiate levels as well. So he has a protocol, and that's something that we've known about for quite a while, and I think it's a phenomenal protocol. He said if you have a concussion, you should take 3 grams 3 times a day of a combination of EPA and DHA of a triglyceride form. So that fits in with our max omega for the first week. So 9 grams the first week. The second week, bring it down to 6 grams. And the third week and thereafter for maintenance dose for protection for head injuries, they were seeing 3 grams a day. So when you look at what we were talking about, bleeding risk too, they're not seeing now what they thought with serious bleeding events occurring. They were seeing some issues with very high levels of EPA specifically, and they needed to look into that more, but it was very modest increase, very modest. So it wasn't anything they were saying was really an issue. So his recommendations are 3 grams of a triglyceride form daily for prevention. And they did see different research out there with looking at DHA specifically with neuroprotection and protects the brain after the stroke. And they found also some other research looking at DHA with decreasing the progression of the spinal cord injury when they did an IV within that 1 hour. And there were slides looking at how it was a lot less of a gap versus those that weren't taking omega-3s. Those again, specifically DHA, looking at flooding the brain with just, he said a combination, but DHA heavy with the nerves in the brain. So the other thing I just wanted to point out that I just
Yeah.
learned recently, typically with traumatic brain injuries or concussions, they say that you shouldn't exercise and, lay low. But now they're seeing that if you are able to, you actually should, because it increases that blood flow. And I guess there's an issue with the autonomic nervous system with carbon dioxide increasing in the brain when you're trying to exercise, and it causes more of an issue. So they find that there's got to be a sub-threshold exercise for safety and for increasing the speed recovery. So
Interesting.
small amounts of exercise gradually will actually increase the speed of recovery. So that
I
I
like
thought
that.
that was
I
fascinating.
like that. Yeah, instead of just sitting around right when you're injured, or even when people are sick, they just or injured, yeah, they just sit, and then you can't get
Right.
that blood flow throughout the body. That's a good point right there. And where can people find out more, Laurel? If they
On
want to,
these
on
or on
anything,
the
on what links you want to leave people with, if you want to stay in the loop with, let's say, Carlson or anything we talked about today, what's a good links for
I mean,
resources?
you can go to PubMed. A lot of those are on PubMed. The studies, like I said, go to Dr. Michael Lewis's page for the TBI and concussions. The bleeding risk, that was the Journal of American Heart Association. That was just in May of this year. So you can look into that. That's on their website. And the AFib is information that, gosh, that was out in the headlines, but you can go to Lee, L-I, et al., and look at some of his information, the UK Biobank with I'm not sure if it was the British Medical Journal for him, but
And then, of course, carlsonlabs.com.
right.
Thank you so much, Laurel, for your time. I always appreciate you coming on.
My
You've
pleasure.
been so consistent, and the whole team there at Carlson. We appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you.